She hit the floor hard, the sound sharp and ugly, her shoulder screaming as bone ground against bone. The cello case crashed beside her, strings inside whining like something wounded. For a split second, the room spun, cheap beige walls, the flickering ceiling light, the shadow of his body looming too close. Patrick didn't even look sorry. Zuri tasted blood. It filled her mouth, metallic and warm, sliding down her chin as she gasped. Her arm lay at an angle it had never known before, useless, wrong. She tried to move it and a raw, animal sound tore out of her throat before she could stop it. "Don't be dramatic," Patrick snapped, already turning away. "You always exaggerate." Her vision blurred, tears burning hot, but she didn't cry. Crying only made him angrier. She had learned that years ago. She pressed her back against the wall, breath coming in shallow, panicked bursts, trying not to black out as pain thundered through her body. Patrick grabbed his jacket from the chair. "Clean this up before someone hears you," he said, as if she'd spilled water instead of shattered something inside herself. "I'll be back." The door slammed. The apartment fell into a ringing, horrible silence. Zuri slid down until she was sitting on the floor, her knees pulled weakly toward her chest. Her arm throbbed in time with her heart. Each beat felt like a hammer. She bit down on her lip so hard she tasted more blood, anything to stay conscious. Her phone lay a few feet away, face down, the screen cracked from when it had flown out of her hand. She stared at it, chest heaving, fear crawling up her spine. Patrick always came back. Sometimes in minutes. Sometimes in hours. Sometimes worse than before. Her fingers shook as she dragged herself toward the phone using her good arm, nails scraping against the tile. Every movement sent fire shooting through her shoulder. By the time she reached it, she was sweating, her breath ragged and uneven. She flipped the phone over. The screen lit up. For a second, she just stared at it, dazed, as if it belonged to someone else. Ode. Her brother. The only person left who might help her. The only one she trusted enough to say the truth. Her thumb hovered over his name in her contacts, trembling. Tears finally spilled, blurring the screen. She typed with one hand, slow and clumsy, letters swimming as pain pulsed through her. "He broke my arm." She stared at the message. Then, because fear made her reckless and the silence felt too loud, she hit send. "Before we go any further, pause for a moment. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your location in the comments. We love seeing how far these stories travel. And if this already has you hooked, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Now, let's continue." The message delivered instantly. Zuri sagged back against the cabinet, eyes closing. Relief flickered weakly in her chest. Ade would come. He always said he would, even if she didn't believe him anymore. Her phone vibrated. Her eyes flew open. Another vibration followed. Then another. She frowned, heart skipping. Ade didn't usually respond that fast. He asked questions first. He called. Her vision sharpened as she lifted the phone, squinting at the screen. Unknown number. Her stomach dropped. Confusion sliced through her panic. She was sure she'd tapped Ade's name. She always did. The contact was right there. Her thumb hadn't slipped. Had it? Another vibration. 3 dots appeared beneath the number. Someone was typing. Zuri's breath caught in her throat. A shiver ran through her, cold and sharp, as if the air itself had shifted. She didn't know why, but something about the pause felt deliberate. Heavy. As though whoever was on the other end was choosing each word carefully. The message came through. "Don't move." Her fingers went numb. The phone vibrated again almost immediately. "I see you." Her pulse slammed so hard it made her dizzy. She looked up, wild-eyed, scanning the apartment. The door was still locked. The windows were dark. No one was there. A laugh bubbled up in her chest, hysterical and broken. This had to be a mistake. A prank. Someone playing with a wrong number. She typed back with shaking fingers. "Who is this?" The reply came too fast. "Are you alone?" Her chest tightened painfully. She swallowed, throat dry. "My husband just left," she typed. "I think my arm is broken. You have the wrong number." The 3 dots appeared again. Disappeared. Reappeared. Yes, the reply finally came. You do. Her heart sank. I'm sorry, she typed, embarrassment flooding through her even in the middle of everything. Please ignore my message. The phone went silent. For a moment, nothing happened. The apartment seemed to breathe again. The buzzing in her ears faded slightly. Then her phone rang. Zuri flinched so hard pain exploded in her shoulder and she cried out, dropping the phone. It rang again on the floor, the sound unbearably loud in the quiet apartment. She stared at it, frozen. Unknown number. Every instinct screamed at her not to answer. She imagined Patrick's face if he walked back in and saw her on the phone. The rage. The accusations. The ringing stopped. Her phone vibrated with a new message. He will be back. Her blood ran cold. She snatched the phone up, fingers slick with sweat. How do you know that? She typed, fear turning her hands clumsy. Several seconds passed. Too long. Then. He never leaves for long. Her chest tightened painfully. Her breathing sped up. Another message followed. Your arm is broken. Tears streamed down her face, unchecked now. You need medical attention, the stranger continued. Now. Her vision blurred. I can't, she typed. He's a police officer. No one will help me. The reply came slower this time, as if weighed down by something unseen. I will. Her breath hitched. Please, she typed, desperation bleeding through every letter. I don't even know who you are. The typing dots appeared. Paused. Then the message arrived. Kang Seohan. The name meant nothing to her. Just another stranger. Another man. Before she could respond, another message appeared. Stay where you are. Her skin prickled. How do you know where I am? She typed, panic surging again. There was a pause. Longer than before. Long enough that dread began to pool in her stomach. Then the phone buzzed. I am watching your building's security feed. Her chest seized. She looked toward the corner of the ceiling where a small black dome camera blinked red. She had never paid attention to it before. Patrick had insisted on installing it, saying it was for safety. Her breathing turned shallow. That's illegal, she typed weakly. There was no reply. Instead, her phone buzzed again, this time with a photo. It was her apartment hallway. Taken seconds ago. Her heart nearly stopped. I can see him in the elevator, the next message read. He is on his way back up. Zuri's hands flew to her mouth as a sob broke free. Panic flooded her system, wild and blinding. What do I do? She typed. Please. The response came instantly. Hide your phone, Seohan wrote. Do not move. Do not make a sound. Her gaze darted to the door just as the sound of the elevator chimed faintly through the wall. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Heavy. Familiar. The doorknob rattled. Zuri's heart pounded so loudly she was sure it could be heard. She shoved the phone beneath the cabinet with her good hand and scrambled backward, pressing herself into the corner just as the lock turned. The door burst open. Patrick stood there, eyes cold, scanning the room. What did I tell you? He said quietly. Zuri clutched her broken arm to her chest, tears streaking down her face, her entire body shaking as the footsteps moved closer. Somewhere far away, in a glass and steel tower overlooking the city, Kang Seohan watched the feed with an expression carved from stone. And he was already on his way. Patrick's boots crossed the threshold slowly, deliberately, as if he wanted the moment to stretch. The door shut behind him with a soft click that sounded louder than a gunshot to Zuri's ears. He didn't rush her. He never did. He liked control too much for that. Look at you, he said, voice low, almost amused. Still on the floor. Zuri pressed her back harder into the corner, her good hand braced against the wall. Her broken arm throbbed, every tiny movement sending white-hot agony through her shoulder. She kept her eyes down, just like she'd learned. Looking at him the wrong way was an invitation. I told you to clean up, Patrick continued, glancing at the blood smeared on the tile. You make everything ugly. I couldn't, she whispered. Her voice shook despite her effort to steady it. It hurts. He crouched in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne layered over sweat and anger. He reached out, fingers brushing her chin, forcing her face up. She winced. "You always say that," he replied calmly. "Pain is temporary. Disobedience lasts longer." Her phone buzzed once beneath the cabinet. Patrick's eyes flicked toward the sound. Zuri's heart slammed violently against her ribs. She shook her head quickly. "It's nothing," she said too fast. "Just the building system. The security alerts do that." Patrick studied her for a long second, eyes sharp, suspicious. Then he straightened, seemingly satisfied. "Get up," he ordered. "You're not bleeding on my floor." She tried. Her body betrayed her immediately. The moment she shifted her weight, her arms screamed and her legs buckled. She cried out despite herself, collapsing back down with a broken sob. Patrick's jaw tightened. "Pathetic," he muttered. Another buzz from the phone. This time, he heard it clearly. "What is that?" he demanded. Zuri's breath came in panicked gasps. Her mind raced, grasping at lies, excuses, anything. "Please," she whispered instead. Just let me sit for a minute." Patrick's gaze hardened. "You don't get to ask," he said. "You get to obey." He stepped toward the cabinet. "No." The word tore out of her before she could stop it. His head snapped toward her. Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. Patrick smiled slowly. "So," he said softly, "you've been talking to someone." Her heart felt like it was tearing itself apart. She shook her head, tears spilling freely now. "I swear," she said. "It was an accident. I didn't mean to." He grabbed her hair and yanked her upright. Pain exploded through her shoulder and she screamed, the sound raw and desperate. "You never mean to," Patrick hissed. "That's your favorite excuse." Her phone buzzed again. And again. Patrick let go of her hair and reached under the cabinet, pulling the phone into the light. He looked at the screen, brows furrowing as he read. "Unknown number." His mouth twisted. "Who is this?" he demanded. Zuri's vision blurred. "I don't know," she sobbed. "I sent the wrong message. I swear." Patrick scoffed. "You expect me to believe that?" The phone buzzed in his hand. A message popped up. "She is not lying." Patrick's smile vanished. His fingers tightened around the phone. "Who the hell is this?" he barked. Another message appeared. "Let her go." Patrick laughed, loud and sharp. "You've got nerve," he said, typing furiously. "This is a private matter. You're interfering with a police officer." The reply came instantly. "I am aware of who you are," Patrick KO'd. The color drained from Patrick's face. Zuri stared at him, confused and terrified. Patrick never looked afraid. "Not like this. How do you know my name?" Patrick typed, his bravado cracking just slightly. There was a pause. A long one. Then, "Because you have been very careless." Patrick's jaw clenched. He glanced around the apartment, suddenly alert, suddenly uneasy. "Are you in this building?" he typed. "No," came the reply. "I am watching you." Patrick's laugh this time was strained. "You think I'm scared of some hacker?" he said aloud, as much for himself as for Zuri. "You think you can threaten me?" The phone vibrated again. The message that appeared made Patrick go very still. "You broke her arm at 1942, it read. "You struck her with your left hand. You fractured the humerus. You are currently standing between her and the exit." Zuri felt something shift in the air. Patrick swallowed. "How?" Another message. "The elevator camera shows you returned at 2011, Siohan continued. "Your body camera is off. That is a violation." Patrick's face twisted with rage. "You don't know who you're dealing with," he snapped, typing fast. "I can trace this number." A final message came through. "You will not have time." The apartment intercom buzzed. Both of them froze. Patrick stared at the door, then at the phone, then back at Zuri. For the first time, uncertainty cracked his authority. The intercom buzzed again. Patrick cursed under his breath and strode to it, jabbing the button. "Who is this?" he demanded. No answer. The security feed on the small monitor by the door flickered. Zuri saw it too. 3 men stood in the lobby below, dressed in dark suits, faces expressionless. They didn't look like cops. They didn't look like criminals either. They looked inevitable. Patrick's phone buzzed one last time. Open the door, Seo-han wrote. Or they will. Patrick's chest rose and fell rapidly. His eyes darted to Zuri, then to the men on the screen. For a split second, she thought he might grab her, use her as leverage. Instead, there was a loud crack. The door splintered inward as the lock gave way. The men moved fast. Too fast. Patrick barely had time to shout before one of them struck him, precise and brutal. Another wrenched his arm behind his back. A third swept his legs out from under him. Patrick hit the floor hard, gasping. Zuri pressed herself against the wall, trembling, her mind struggling to catch up with what she was seeing. One of the men knelt in front of Patrick, voice calm and cold. Patrick KO'd, he said. You are being detained. For what? Patrick spat, struggling uselessly. You have no authority. The man glanced back at the hallway camera. Our authority does not require your understanding. Patrick screamed as his wrist was twisted sharply, a sickening crack echoing through the apartment. Zuri flinched, tears spilling freely. Another man approached her, kneeling carefully in front of her, his movements unexpectedly gentle. Ma'am, he said softly, we're here to help you. She stared at him, numb. Who? Someone who saw you, he replied. Strong arms lifted her carefully, supporting her broken arm, easing her against his chest. She cried out once, then collapsed into shaking sobs as the pain and shock finally overwhelmed her. As they carried her out of the apartment, she caught one last glimpse of Patrick on the floor, face twisted in rage and fear. A man stepped over him and leaned down, whispering something Zuri couldn't hear. Patrick's eyes widened. Then Zuri's vision faded to black. When she woke, the world was quiet. Too quiet. Soft light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows. The air smelled clean, sterile, expensive. Her body felt heavy, wrapped in warmth. She tried to move and winced. Her arm was immobilized in a sleek medical brace, supported by a sling. The pain was still there, but dulled now, distant. She blinked, disoriented. This wasn't a hospital room. This was something else entirely. Glass walls, dark wood floors, a city skyline stretching endlessly beyond her view. Machines hummed softly nearby, monitoring her vitals. A woman in tailored black approached her bed, smiling gently. You're awake, she said. That's good. Where am I? Zuri whispered, her throat dry. Echelon Spire, the woman replied. You're safe here. Zuri swallowed. Who brought me? The woman hesitated just long enough to make Zuri's stomach tighten. Kang Seo-han did, she said finally. The name settled into Zuri's chest, heavy and unfamiliar. As if summoned by the sound of it, footsteps approached. A man entered the room. He was tall, dressed impeccably, his presence filling the space without effort. His expression was unreadable, eyes dark and sharp, fixed entirely on her. Zuri's breath caught. This was the man who had answered her message. The wrong number. Kang Seo-han stopped beside her bed, gaze sweeping over her injuries, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. You should not have moved, he said quietly. His voice was calm, controlled, but there was something dangerous coiled beneath it. Zuri swallowed hard. You said you saw me, she whispered. How? His eyes met hers. I always pay attention, he replied. And for the first time since the night began, Zuri felt something other than fear take root in her chest. Something far more complicated. Zuri stared at him, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. Up close, Kang Seo-han was even more unsettling than she'd imagined from his voice and messages. His presence wasn't loud or aggressive. It was controlled, deliberate, like a blade kept sheathed only because its owner chose restraint. I didn't know where else to go, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't even know who you were. Seo-han didn't answer right away. He pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat, folding his hands neatly in front of him. The movement was unhurried, as if the world bent around his timing. His gaze never left her face. "You went where you were seen," he said. "That is enough." She frowned faintly. "Seen? Yes." His eyes softened just a fraction. "Most people look. Very few see." The room fell quiet again, broken only by the soft hum of machines and the distant city noise far below. Zuri became acutely aware of herself, her tangled hair, the hospital gown, the vulnerability of being horizontal while he sat upright, perfectly composed. "Am I free to leave?" she asked, the question trembling despite her attempt to sound steady. Siahan's gaze flicked briefly to the door, where two men stood unobtrusively, hands clasped in front of them. When he looked back at her, his expression was neutral. "Not yet," he said. Her chest tightened. "Why?" "Because your husband will look for you," he replied calmly. "And because you are injured. And because this city is not kind to women who run." She swallowed. "Patrick won't." "He will," Siahan cut in gently. "Men like him do not stop until they are stopped." A chill crept up her spine. "And you?" she asked quietly. "Are you stopping him?" The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "I already have." That should have frightened her. Instead, it brought a strange, unwelcome sense of relief. She hated herself for it. A nurse entered, adjusting the drip at her bedside, checking her vitals. Siahan stood as the woman worked, stepping back but never leaving the room. When the nurse finished and left, the silence returned, thicker than before. "You broke his wrist," Zuri said suddenly. Siahan looked at her, surprised. "I saw it," she continued, "before I passed out." "Yes," he said simply. "Why?" The word slipped out before she could stop it. He studied her for a long moment. "Because he broke your arm," he replied. "And because he would have killed you eventually." Her breath caught painfully in her chest. She stared at the ceiling, blinking back tears. No one had ever said it that plainly before. "You don't know that," she whispered. "I do," Siahan said. She laughed softly, a broken sound. "You're very sure of things." "I am," he agreed. Another pause stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. "Can I ask you something?" Zuri said finally. "Yes." "Why me?" For the first time, Siahan hesitated. The silence that followed was different, charged, almost electric. Zuri turned her head to look at him again, searching his face for cracks. "You already asked that," he said eventually. "And you didn't answer." "No," he agreed. "I did not." Her fingers curled weakly into the sheets. "I need to know," she said. "If I'm here because you're kind, or because you're curious, or because you want something from me." His gaze sharpened slightly at that. "You assume those are separate things." Her pulse quickened. "Aren't they?" He leaned closer, close enough that she could see the faint scar near his jaw, the barely perceptible tension in his shoulders. "I am not kind," he said quietly. "I am not curious. And I do not take what is not given." The words sent a shiver through her. "Then why am I here?" "Because you asked for help," he said. "And because I decided to answer." She searched his eyes, trying to find deception, madness, anything that made sense of him. She found none. Only certainty. "I want to go home," she said softly, even though she knew it was a lie. "There is no home for you there anymore," Siahan replied. The truth of it hit her harder than any blow Patrick had ever given her. Days passed, though they blurred together in a haze of painkillers, rest, and quiet. Zuri's arm healed under expert care. Physical therapists came and went. Meals arrived unannounced, always perfectly timed. Guards were everywhere, though they were careful never to crowd her. She wasn't locked in her room. Not exactly. But every door required permission. Every window was reinforced glass. The building hummed with invisible eyes. A gilded cage. Siahan visited once a day. Sometimes twice. He never touched her. Never raised his voice. He asked questions about her recovery, her comfort, her sleep. He listened when she spoke, truly listened, in a way that made her words feel heavier, more important. At night she heard things. Muffled conversations through the walls. Voices speaking in Korean, clipped and urgent. The distant echo of raised voices. Once, a scream, cut off abruptly. She lay awake, staring into the dark, heart racing, wondering what kind of world she'd stepped into. One night, unable to sleep, she slipped out of bed and padded quietly toward the glass wall overlooking the city. The light stretched endlessly, a constellation of power and wealth and danger. Behind her, a voice spoke softly. "You should be resting." She turned sharply. Seo-han stood in the doorway, watching her. "I couldn't sleep," she said. He nodded. "You hear too much at night." Her cheeks flushed. "Is that intentional?" "Yes." "Why?" "So you understand where you are," he said. "And what protects you." Her arms wrapped around herself. "It doesn't feel like protection," she admitted. "It feels like fear." He approached slowly, stopping a careful distance away. "Fear keeps you alive," he said. "Illusions get you killed." She laughed quietly. "You really believe that?" "I live by it." She hesitated, then asked, "Do you watch me sleep?" The question hung between them, fragile and dangerous. Seo-han didn't deny it. "Yes." Her breath hitched. "Why?" "To make sure you are breathing," he replied. "And because when you are asleep, you do not pretend." Her pulse raced. "Pretend what?" "That you are not afraid," he said. She looked away, throat tight. "I am afraid," she whispered. "Of him? Of you? Of what happens next?" He was silent for a moment. Then, "Fear is not weakness," he said. "It is information. Learn to use it." The next morning, he brought her something unexpected. A cello. It stood in the corner of her room, polished wood gleaming softly in the light. Her breath caught painfully. "Where did you get that?" "I have always had it," Seo-han replied. Her fingers trembled as she approached it, her good hand hovering just above the strings. "I haven't played in years," she whispered. "Patrick." "I know," Seo-han said. She turned to him, eyes wide. "You know?" "Yes." "How?" He didn't answer. Instead, he tapped a button on the wall. A large screen slid down, flickering to life. Her breath left her body in a rush. The screen showed her. Younger. Stronger. Standing on a stage beneath warm lights, her cello tucked against her shoulder. Her fingers moved with precision and passion, her face lost in the music. Her performance. 5 years ago. She stared, stunned. "How do you have this?" "I was there," Seo-han said quietly. She turned slowly. "At the concert?" "Yes." Her heart pounded. "Why?" "Because your music stopped a room full of monsters," he replied. "Including me." A chill raced down her spine. "You followed me," she said, realization dawning. "I observed you," he corrected. "From a distance." "For how long?" "Long enough to know that what he did to you was a waste," Seo-han said. Her hands clenched into fists. "That's not an answer." "No," he agreed. "It is a truth." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "This wasn't fate," she said. "This was planned." He met her gaze steadily. "Fate is only planning you do not see." She backed away, heart racing. "I need air." He didn't stop her as she fled to the balcony, cool night air hitting her face. She gripped the railing, breathing hard. Behind her, Seo-han spoke softly. "I did not cause your pain," he said. "But I will not waste it." She turned slowly, tears streaking her face. "That's a terrifying thing to say." "Yes," he replied. "It is meant to be." She stared at him, the city roaring beneath them, and realized with a jolt of fear and clarity that whatever this was between them, it had begun long before her arm ever broke. And it was already changing her. Zuri didn't sleep after that. She lay in the wide, impossibly soft bed, staring at the ceiling as the city pulsed beneath the glass tower. Seo-han's words echoed again and again in her mind, folding into each other until she couldn't tell where fear ended and something else began. "I will not waste it." Her pain. Her survival. Her brokenness. She pressed her good hand against her chest, feeling her heart race, and hated herself for the small, traitorous spark of strength that flickered beneath the fear. Patrick had taken so much from her, her music, her confidence, her sense of time, but he had never given her clarity like this. Never given her the brutal honesty of knowing exactly where she stood. Morning came without ceremony. Light spilled across the floor, pale and sharp. When Zuri finally drifted into a shallow, restless sleep, it was broken barely an hour later by a soft knock. A woman entered, tall and athletic, her dark hair pulled back tight. Her eyes assessed Zuri with clinical precision. "Get dressed," she said calmly. "Training begins today." Zuri pushed herself upright, heart stuttering. "Training," she repeated. The woman nodded once. "My name is Min-jae. I will not repeat myself." Zuri glanced around the room. Seo-han didn't. "He does not need to," Min-jae replied. "He already decided." That familiar tightening coiled in Zuri's stomach. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, wincing as her shoulder twinged. The brace was still there, firm and supportive, but the ache was different now. Less blinding. More insistent. Min-jae's gaze flicked to it. "Pain teaches faster than comfort," she said. "But we will not break what is already healing." Zuri followed her through the tower, past guarded doors and silent elevators, into a space she hadn't seen before. The room was wide and stark, all matte black floors and mirrored walls. Weapons lined one side with quiet menace. Her breath caught. "This isn't," she began. "Optional." Min-jae finished. "No." Zuri's hands trembled. "I'm not a fighter." Min-jae turned to her, expression flat. "You were not a survivor once either." The words struck harder than any slap. Zuri swallowed, her pulse pounding. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Min-jae tilted her head slightly. "Because fear without skill is a leash. And you have worn one long enough." She tossed Zuri a small blade. The metal caught the light as Zuri fumbled it, nearly dropping it before her fingers closed around the hilt. "I don't know how to use this," Zuri said. "You will," Min-jae replied. "Or you will bleed." The first hour was humiliating. Zuri's movements were clumsy, her balance off, her instincts wrong. Min-jae corrected her without mercy, snapping commands, striking her wrist when her grip faltered, sweeping her legs out from under her when she hesitated. Again. Zuri hit the mat hard, air leaving her lungs in a painful rush. Again. Sweat stung her eyes. Her arm burned. Her body screamed for rest. Again. By the third hour, her hands shook uncontrollably. Tears blurred her vision, frustration choking her. "I can't," she gasped. Min-jae crouched in front of her. "You can," she said calmly. "You are choosing not to." Zuri's jaw clenched. "You don't understand," she snapped. "I spent years trying not to make him angry. Trying not to move wrong. Not to breathe too loud." Min-jae's gaze didn't soften. "Then this should feel familiar," she said. "The difference is now you are learning how to strike back." Something inside Zuri snapped. She lunged. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't clean. But it was fast. Her blade grazed Min-jae's arm, drawing a thin line of red. The room went very still. Zuri froze, horrified. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean." Min-jae looked down at the blood, then back at Zuri. Slowly, she smiled. "Good," she said. Zuri stared at her hands, chest heaving, adrenaline roaring through her veins. She had drawn blood. The realization hit her like lightning. Not by accident. Not because someone allowed it. Because she chose to move. From that day on, training became routine. Pain became language. Her body changed first, stronger legs, steadier balance, reflexes sharpening with each repetition. Then her mind followed. Fear no longer paralyzed her. It informed her, guided her. Seo-han watched sometimes, silent in the shadows. He never interrupted, never praised. His gaze followed every movement, every hesitation, every breakthrough. One evening, after a particularly brutal session, Zuri collapsed onto the mat, chest heaving. "You're enjoying this," she said breathlessly without looking at him. "Yes," Seo-han replied calmly. "That's disturbing." "So is watching someone remain weak when they do not have to," he said. She pushed herself upright, wiping sweat from her brow. "You're turning me into something," she said. "I am giving you back what was taken," he corrected. "What you become is your choice." She studied him, heart racing. "Is it?" she asked quietly. He stepped closer, his presence pressing in on her senses. "Every time you pick up the blade," he said, "you choose." The words settled deep in her chest. Weeks passed. The necklace appeared one night without warning. It lay on her dresser when she returned from training, black diamonds set against a sleek band of dark metal. It was beautiful. Dangerous. She lifted it carefully. "What is this?" "Protection," Siohan said from the doorway. She looked up sharply. "From who?" "From anyone who touches you without permission," he replied. "Including me." Her fingers tightened around it. "What's the cost?" His gaze didn't waver. "Transparency." Her stomach twisted. "You're listening." "Yes." She laughed softly, a brittle sound. "Of course you are." She wore it anyway. The first time it activated, she nearly tore it off. A sharp inhale echoed in her ear, her own breathing, amplified, invasive. Panic surged, instinct screaming to rip it away. "Breathe," Siohan's voice murmured through the earpiece. "Slow." She froze. "You're listening now?" "Only when you are in danger," he replied. "Or when you forget you are not alone." Her pulse steadied despite herself. The gala was announced 2 days later. The Obsidian Hall. Her name on the program. Her hands shook as she read the invitation. "I can't do this," she said. "Everyone will see me." "That is the point," Siohan replied. "Patrick is desperate," Siohan finished. "And desperate men make mistakes." Her throat tightened. "What if he's there?" "Then he will watch you stand," Siohan said. "And remember what he could not break." The night of the gala arrived wrapped in rain. Zuri stood before the mirror in a crimson gown that clung like armor. Her arm had healed enough to play. Not perfectly, but strong enough. Siohan fastened the necklace around her neck himself, fingers careful, precise. "If you feel afraid," he said quietly, "tell me." She met his gaze in the mirror. "What if I don't want to be afraid anymore?" His eyes darkened. "Then step onto the stage." As she walked into the hall, lights flaring, applause rising like a wave, Zuri felt something settle into place inside her. Fear didn't vanish. It bowed. And when her bow touched the strings, the sound that rose wasn't survival. It was command. The first note cut through the hall like a blade. Zuri felt it vibrate through her bones, deep and resonant, the cello pressed firmly against her body as if it belonged there again. The obsidian hall fell into a hush so complete it felt sacred. Hundreds of faces blurred into shadow beyond the lights, but she didn't look at them. She didn't need to. Her fingers moved. Not with the trembling hesitation she'd once known, but with intention. Every stroke of the bow carried weight. Every pause demanded attention. The music swelled and dipped, dark and aching, threaded with fury and longing and something sharper, control. High above, in a private balcony wrapped in smoked glass, Kong Siohan watched. His gaze never left her. The necklace at Zuri's throat was warm against her skin. With every breath she took, she was aware of it, not as a leash, but as a presence. A reminder. When her pulse quickened, a low murmur brushed her ear. "You're steady," Siohan's voice said. "Continue." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The music answered for her. The applause came like thunder when she finished, crashing over the room in waves. Zuri rose slowly, bow still in hand, and turned toward the audience. For a heartbeat, she stood perfectly still. Then she saw him. Patrick stood near the edge of the crowd, dressed in a dark uniform, badge gleaming beneath the lights. His eyes locked onto hers with a fury so intense it felt physical. Her breath caught, but only for a second. The necklace hummed softly. "Eyes on him," Siohan's voice said calmly. "Do not look away." Zuri didn't. She held Patrick's gaze as she bowed, her lips curving into the faintest smile. It shattered him. She could see it in the way his jaw clenched, the way his shoulders squared as he pushed through the crowd toward the stage. The applause faded into confusion as he raised a hand. "Zuri KO'd," Patrick called out, his voice amplified and authoritative. "You are under arrest." A ripple of shock ran through the room. Zuri straightened slowly. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady. She turned fully to face him. "For what?" she asked clearly. Patrick strode forward, badge raised. "For falsifying evidence, obstruction of justice, and endangering public safety," he snapped. "Step away from the instrument." Murmurs broke out among the guests. Cameras lifted. Phones came out. Zuri didn't move. "You don't have jurisdiction here," she said evenly. "And you know it." Patrick's eyes burned. "You don't get to tell me where I have jurisdiction," he snarled. "Put the cello down." "Patrick," she said softly, and the use of his name sent a tremor through the air. "You don't want to do this." He laughed harshly. "You think this little performance makes you untouchable?" "No," she replied. "The truth does." She reached into the pocket hidden within her gown and withdrew a small device. A remote. Patrick froze. "What is that?" he demanded. Zuri met his gaze. "Evidence." She pressed the button. The massive screen behind the stage flickered to life. Gasps rippled through the hall as footage filled the display, grainy at first, then unmistakably clear. Patrick in their apartment. His voice raised. His hand striking. Her body hitting the floor. The room erupted. "No!" Patrick shouted, spinning toward the screen. "That's fabricated." The footage continued. Time-stamped. Audio crisp. "You always exaggerate. You don't get to ask." Her broken arm visible. His rage undeniable. Zuri's chest rose and fell steadily as she watched the truth spill into the open. She hadn't seen the footage before. Seo-han hadn't shown it to her. But she knew it existed. She trusted it. Patrick lunged toward her. He didn't get far. Security flooded in from every side, blocking his path. Cameras zoomed in. Guests shouted. Chaos exploded across the hall. "Get away from me!" Patrick roared, struggling as hands grabbed his arms. Zuri stepped forward, voice cutting through the noise. "You abused your authority," she said clearly. "You falsified reports. You assaulted me and used your badge to silence me." Patrick's face twisted. "You're lying," he screamed. "She's unstable. She's been manipulated." "By who?" Zuri asked calmly. Patrick's gaze flicked, involuntarily, toward the balcony. Seo-han stepped into view. The room stilled again, not with confusion this time, but recognition. Whispers spread like wildfire. "That's Kang Seo-han. Isn't he?" "No way." Patrick went pale. "You," he spat. "This is you. You did this." Seo-han didn't raise his voice. "You did this," he replied simply. Patrick thrashed, desperation bleeding into his movements. "You think you've won," he shouted at Zuri. "You think he'll keep you. You're just another thing to him." Zuri walked closer, close enough that Patrick could see her clearly. "I know exactly what he is," she said. "The difference is, I chose." Patrick laughed hysterically as cuffs snapped around his wrists. "This isn't over," he snarled. "You hear me? This isn't." He was dragged away, his voice swallowed by the uproar. Zuri stood there, trembling now, not with fear, but release. The weight she'd carried for years cracked and fell away in pieces. The audience erupted into applause again, louder, wilder than before. She turned toward the balcony. Seo-han inclined his head. Later, in a quiet corridor behind the stage, Zuri leaned against the wall, her breath finally unsteady. The adrenaline drained fast, leaving her weak. "You did well," Seo-han said softly as he approached. She laughed shakily. "You say that like it was a chess move." "It was," he replied. "And you made it yourself." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "He's going to prison." "Yes." "And if he doesn't?" she asked quietly. Seo-han's expression didn't change. "Then he will not matter." The words sent a chill through her, but she didn't pull away. News broke within the hour. Patrick KO'd arrested. Evidence leaked. Charges pending. Public outrage ignited. Zuri watched it unfold from the back seat of Seohan's car as rain streaked down the windows. The city blurred past, light smearing into gold and white. "It's over," she whispered. Seohan glanced at her. "No," he said. "It is finished." She closed her eyes. 2 days later, the transport vehicle carrying Patrick to a secure holding facility veered off the road. Official reports cited brake failure. A tragic accident. Zuri read the headline without expression. She didn't ask questions. Seohan didn't offer answers. The silence between them was thick, heavy with understanding. Weeks passed. One evening, Seohan took her to the balcony overlooking the city, rain falling softly around them. He held out a small box. Zuri stared at it, heart pounding. "What is this?" "A choice," he said. She opened it. Inside was a ring, dark, elegant, unmistakably powerful. "Marry me," Seohan said quietly. "Stand beside me. Not as someone protected, but as someone who cannot be ignored." She looked at the ring, then at him. "Is this love?" she asked. "It is devotion," he replied. "It is honesty. It is permanence." She slipped the ring onto her finger. "Yes," she said. The rain soaked them both as she lifted her cello and began to play. The music rose into the night, fierce and unafraid. And when Zuri smiled, it wasn't as a woman rescued. It was as a woman who had learned how to wield the darkness, and chose to own it. The city did not slow for grief. It never had. From the windows of Echelon Spire, Zuri watched traffic coil through the streets like glowing veins, people moving with purpose, oblivious to the fact that one man's life had ended in twisted metal and an official lie. Patrick Kode's name vanished from the news cycle in less than 48 hours. Outrage burned fast, then cooled. Another scandal replaced it. Another distraction. She learned, in those days, how quickly the world moved on. Seohan never mentioned Patrick again. Not his arrest. Not the transport accident. Not the screams that had echoed through the gala hall. The silence around it was deliberate, almost ceremonial. And slowly, Zuri understood, this was how his world worked. Problems did not linger. They were removed. Cleanly. Quietly. She thought she would feel haunted. Instead, she felt still. In the mornings, she trained. Not because she was told to any more, but because her body demanded it. Min Jae pushed her harder now, no longer treating her like something fragile that might shatter. Bruises bloomed along Zuri's arms and ribs, fading and returning in cycles that felt grounding. Familiar. Real. Pain had rules here. Pain ended. After training, she played. The cello no longer felt like a relic of a life she'd lost. It felt like a weapon she had reclaimed. Her fingers were stronger now, her posture surer. The music she pulled from the strings was darker, deeper, less pleading, more commanding. Seohan listened from a distance. He always did. Sometimes she caught him standing just beyond the doorway, hands folded behind his back, his expression unreadable as the music filled the tower. Other times, she felt him through the necklace, a subtle shift, a quiet presence, as if the sound had summoned him without her asking. One evening, as the city drowned beneath a storm, Zuri found him in the study overlooking Hanul City. The rain streaked down the glass, distorting the skyline into something abstract and dangerous. "You don't regret it," he said without turning. It wasn't a question. Zuri stopped a few feet behind him. "Regret what?" He finally looked at her. "Choosing this." She considered the answer carefully. "I regret that I didn't choose sooner," she said. His gaze sharpened, not with surprise, but with interest. "You understand what standing beside me means," Seohan said. "There will be no distance. No ignorance. No illusions." "I know," she replied. "People will fear you," he continued. "Some will hate you. Some will try to use you to reach me." She met his eyes steadily. "Let them." A pause stretched between them, heavy with assessment. "You have changed," he said finally. "So have you," she replied. That earned her a faint smile. Rare. Dangerous. The engagement was not announced publicly. In Seohan's world, visibility was currency. Power moved best when it was quiet. Only a select few were informed, men and women whose loyalty had already been tested and proven. They bowed when Zuri entered rooms now. Not because she demanded it. Because Seo Han did not correct them. At first, the weight of it unsettled her. She wasn't used to being looked at like something that could not be dismissed. But slowly, she learned how to carry it. How to meet gazes without flinching. How to speak without softening her voice. She watched how Seo Han commanded space, not through volume, but certainty. He never rushed. Never explained more than necessary. He let silence work for him. She practiced the same. One night, she accompanied him to a meeting in Hanul City. The building was older than Echelon Spire, its walls steeped in history and blood. Men watched her carefully as she entered, measuring, calculating. She didn't look away. Seo Han took his seat at the head of the table. He didn't introduce her. He didn't need to. She will be present, he said simply. You will speak as if she is listening. Because she is. No one argued. During the meeting, she said nothing. She didn't need to. She observed. Learned the cadence of their conversations, the unspoken hierarchies, the way power shifted with the slightest tilt of a head. When it was over, one man lingered behind, his smile sharp and insincere. You trust her deeply, he said to Seo Han. That can be dangerous. Seo Han's expression didn't change. Trust is always dangerous, he replied. That is why it is valuable. The man's eyes flicked to Zuri. Something calculating passed through them. She smiled. Just enough. Later, in the car, her pulse still hummed with adrenaline. You let him test me, she said. Yes. And if I had failed? You wouldn't have, Seo Han replied. She studied him. You're very sure of me. I am sure of what you choose, he said. And you chose to stay. The truth of it settled into her chest, warm and heavy. That night, she dreamed of rain. Not the suffocating kind that pinned her to the floor of an apartment, but the cleansing kind. The kind that washed streets clean and left the air sharp and bright. She woke with Seo Han's hand resting lightly against her back, his presence solid and grounding. You're awake, he murmured. Yes. Good, he said. There is something you should see. He led her to a private room deep within the tower. The walls were lined with screens, each displaying a different feed, streets, buildings, faces. This is my world, he said quietly. And now, it is yours too. She approached one of the screens, recognizing a familiar intersection. You watch everything. Only what matters, he corrected. And who decides that? You will, he said. Her breath caught. Me. Yes. He handed her a tablet. On it were names, accounts, routes, decisions waiting to be made. You don't want a queen who is ornamental, Seo Han continued. You want one who understands the board. She met his gaze. And if I decide something you don't like? A pause. Then we will discuss it, he said. As equals. The word sent a shiver through her. Equal. She looked back at the screens, at the vast, intricate web of influence and consequence. Fear stirred, but it didn't paralyze her. It sharpened her. I want to start here, she said, tapping a name on the tablet. Seo Han's eyes darkened with approval. Yes, he said softly. You're ready. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the glass like applause. Zuri stood in the center of the room, surrounded by power, by choice, by consequence, and for the first time in her life, she felt no need to run from the darkness. She had learned how to stand inside it. And it recognized her. The rain had a different sound at that height. Up on the uppermost balcony of Echelon Spire, it didn't splatter or roar. It whispered. It slid along glass and steel like something alive, tracing slow paths downward as if the tower itself were breathing. Zuri stood barefoot on the cold stone, the city spread beneath her like a living map. Hanul City pulsed in the distance, lights flickering in coded rhythms she was beginning to understand. Traffic patterns. Blind spots. Corridors of power. She no longer watched the city as a victim wondering where danger might come from. She watched it as someone calculating where it would go next. Behind her, The door opened softly. "You should wear shoes," Seohan said. She smiled without turning. "You don't," she replied. He stepped beside her, rain darkening the shoulders of his coat. They stood in silence, two figures framed against the skyline, neither needing to fill the space with words. Below them, the city moved. Somewhere in that motion, consequences were unfolding that Zuri had already set into motion hours earlier. "They won't notice the shift right away," she said calmly. "They'll think it's a supply delay. A miscommunication." Seohan glanced at her, something like quiet approval in his eyes. "And when they do notice, they'll already be isolated," she replied. "No allies. No leverage." A pause. "You didn't hesitate," he observed. She finally turned to face him. The rain clung to her lashes, her hair slick against her neck, the black diamond at her throat catching faint light. "I used to freeze," she said. "Every time. I waited for permission. For pain. For aftermath. And now I decide," she said simply. Seohan studied her the way he always did in moments like this, not possessive, not indulgent, but precise. As if he were confirming something he had already known. "There will be backlash," he said. "Power never shifts quietly." "I know. There will be attempts," he continued. "To test you. To frighten you. To remind you of what you once were." Zuri's lips curved faintly. "They're welcome to try." The words weren't bravado. They were fact. A soft vibration brushed her throat, the necklace activating. She tilted her head slightly, listening. "What is it?" Seohan asked. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, sorting through the incoming information. A feed. A movement. A presence too close to one of their outer lines. "Someone is curious," she said. "Too curious." "Do you want me to handle it?" he asked. She opened her eyes. "No," she replied. "I want to watch." That earned her another rare smile. Smaller this time. Sharper. They returned inside, the doors sealing them off from the rain and the city below. The warmth of the tower wrapped around her like a second skin. Familiar now. Chosen. Inside the control room, the screens glowed softly. Faces moved across them. Names. Patterns. Zuri stepped forward, her reflection splitting across the glass. For a moment, she caught sight of herself, not as she was now, but as she had been. On a different screen. A small apartment. Beige walls. A woman on the floor, arm bent wrong, blood on her lip. She didn't flinch. She reached out and turned the screen off. Seohan watched her closely. "Do you want it removed entirely?" he asked. "The footage. The record." She shook her head. "No." "Why keep it?" "Because forgetting is dangerous," she said. "And because I don't want to pretend this came from nowhere." A beat. "You don't owe pain loyalty," Seohan said. "I know," she replied. "But I owe myself honesty." He inclined his head, accepting it. Later that night, as the tower settled into its quiet hum, Zuri stood alone in the music room. The lights were low. The city reflected faintly in the glass behind her. She lifted her cello. The first note rose slow and deep, vibrating through the room like a held breath. She played without audience, without performance in mind. This wasn't for reclaiming something lost. This was for marking something claimed. The music darkened, threading through silence and shadow, carrying intent instead of longing. When she finished, the last note lingered, refusing to fade quickly. She lowered the bow. In the quiet that followed, she felt it again, that subtle pressure beneath her ribs. Not fear. Anticipation. The necklace warmed. Her breath echoed softly in her ear, followed by a voice that was not Seohan's. "You move faster than expected." Zuri didn't startle. She straightened slowly, heart steady. "You shouldn't be listening," she said calmly. "I wasn't," the voice replied. "Not until you crossed a line." She tilted her head slightly, considering. "Which line?" A pause. "That remains to be seen." The connection cut. Zuri stood very still. Then she smiled. When Seohan found her moments later, she was calm, composed, cello resting against her shoulder. Someone reached out, she said. His gaze sharpened instantly. Who? I don't know yet, she replied. But they wanted me to know they exist. And how do you feel about that? He asked. She met his eyes, something dark and alive moving behind her gaze. Relieved, she said. It would have been boring if this was the end. For a long moment, Seo-han said nothing. Then he nodded. Yes, he agreed quietly. It would have. Outside, the rain began again, steady, patient, inevitable. And far beyond the glass and steel, unseen forces shifted, recalculated, and took notice of the woman who no longer waited to be broken. She had learned how to answer. And this time, she would not send the wrong message. Before you go, thank you, truly, for staying with this story all the way to the end. If it made you feel something, even just for a moment, show your support by subscribing and dropping a comment with the part that stayed with you the most. I read every single one, and they mean more than you know. And don't forget to tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel and where all of you are tuning in from. Until next time, stay safe, stay grounded, and be well.